The story unfolds in an imperial academy. The main character in this life has absolutely everything: great looks, great personality, success in studies, and a good family. His main rival, who has achieved the same success, Emily. But for the girl, he is just a guy with the same grades, although he himself is completely satisfied with it. As one of the highest-ranked educational institutions, Manhwa Academy educates talented children in various fields: swordsmanship, magic, and theoretical knowledge. Every year, more than 17 girls and boys aspire to enroll there in hopes of realizing their dreams. Well, now let's look at the list of those admitted. In first place is Emily, and only in second place is a guy named Perry. Even the other guys were surprised to see the first item in the ranking. Emily? This is the first time I've heard of such a family. I can't believe she beat Perry, interjected the other students. Miss Emily, congratulations on first place. Decided to be the first to speak, Perry, who was the first to approach the top student. As expected, Perry is different. You bet he is. After all, Perry has an excellent character. He's just an angel. Immediately, the students began to chatter as soon as they noticed Perry's talented student. Naturally, I hear that a lot. It's bad enough I didn't get to be the first, but it's okay if our conversation ends up like this. Now hurry up and marvel at my endless generosity. Decided the same guy, Perry. Thanks, replied Emily to him and wanted to say nothing more. You don't have anything else to say, do you? If that's the case, I'll go, added the girl, and indeed left in silence. At that moment, Perry seemed to hear his pride splinter into small pieces. Perry's father has 4 children, a daughter and 3 sons. Among them, Perry is the 5th nephew of King Ghent, the current emperor of the empire. He was born a member of the royal family, and it didn't matter if it was sword-wielding, magic, or theoretical subjects. He excelled in everything. He made a name for himself by ranking first in the Manhwa Academy, the same one that accepted prodigies from all over the empire between the ages of 13 and 16. Blonde hair with golden highlights, eyes the color of clear skies. He could captivate anyone with his mesmerizing smile. Perry's future was predetermined. Emily, where did you come from anyway? First place was supposed to be mine. Angry in his mind, the protagonist of this story. I'm shocked. Did you hear that? How can she be so tactless? Even though Perry was the first to congratulate her, she didn't even thank him. Discussed among themselves other students, who also noticed the ingratitude of the girl who settled the first place in the ranking. Perry himself continued to think about the fact that this was the first time he was hearing about Emily's family. If we saw each other in high society, I'd recognize her. Maybe she's from an ordinary family after all. Tried to remember the boy, looking at Emily. Carefully styled hair with a dark purple hue, complete indifference and a face as cold as ice. Neat. Noted Perry as he scrutinized the girl. Despite yesterday's rain, the sky is so clear today. Amazing. Truly romantic, said the guy who was asked what he was looking at. It just so happened that Emily was sitting by the window, so Perry was able to excuse himself. In fact, he certainly didn't care about that sky. I just wonder what people are thinking when they look at me, sneaked into the guy's mind. He holds a high position in society, and yet he still cares about a mere trifle. Such a benevolent, polite, and impeccable person. That's what people think of when they see Perry. Perry, have you decided what major you're going to go into yet? How about the technical department? Of course he has decided. His father is the best knight of the empire. That's right. Sir Isaac joined the Royal Guard right after graduation. The girls were discussing aloud near Perry himself. Duke's next successor was his first son, Noah. The second son, Isaac. I have 2 older brothers who made the family name famous, and I'm the complete opposite of them. Isaac and I are constantly compared since he is only a year older than me. I will never be able to outshine my brothers, however. I have to make sure my actions don't harm the family's reputation. This is my role as the 3rd son, explains the main character Perry. I'm afraid I haven't made up my mind yet. The choice of spheres is so varied. With a smile, the boy replied to his female classmates. "Of course, you're so talented in magic you needn't worry," added one of the girls, and then they left together. At this time, the other classmates were once again discussing Emily. The girls had never heard of this author Emily before. One of the classmates said that Emily's author is known as the founder. He is afraid of society and hates to be criticized. In addition, he gave up a high position. In this regard, nothing is known about his family in a thick way, narrated Alice. Alice, who had heard about the family of the best student in the academy, also added that there were so many discrepancies in the story that it was quite difficult to make sense of it. "So that's what this family is. They are too loud about it, and the story is not a nice one either. But she doesn't care. Either she's unsentimental, or she has good self-control, or she's just not interested in other people's chatter. One of the three," thought the protagonist as he noticed Emily's indifference. "Being a knight isn't so bad, but if I go into government, it might help my father. A knighthood would probably suit Isaac, the second son, better, and using father's reputation isn't worth it. That's what the third son is, but no matter how good he is, there will always be an invisible game between his brothers and him. Always remember your place in this family. Don't try to stand out. Perry, remember your place," his older brother once said, and Perry himself remembered those words for the rest of his life. "The new semester is disappointing. I'm going for a walk after school." The main character decided to distract himself a little. Perry decided to take a walk in the academy's garden. "Although it's very beautiful here, it doesn't compare to the palace garden," thought the boy as he walked through the streets of the park. It was then that he happened to see Miss Emily, who unexpectedly for Perry himself was in contact with the goddess at that moment. Fiona is the goddess of love and is mentioned in the myths of the founding of the empire. Legend has it that whoever prays to her will find love. That's why Perry was surprised to see Emily next to this goddess. "This just can't be true, Miss Emily believes this?" wondered the boy. "It's not like she's in a relationship, and with that frosty look she wouldn't admit to anyone, let alone dating." Perry continued to reason. Since the girl had also noticed the guy, she decided to ask what he even wanted as Perry gazed intently at the student. "I'm working. You're distracting me. If you want to see the statue, wait your turn," Emily said in a cold tone, at which point the surprised boy decided to inquire as to what kind of work we were even talking about. "I'm in the process of polishing the statue. I'm busy at the moment," explained the girl, who had a handkerchief in her hand. "If you're enjoying an evening stroll, I'll finish it later," the girl also added. At that moment, the curious guy couldn't resist asking why on earth the girl was cleaning it. "Why do you ask?" "Obviously, making money. Of course I have permission," told the academy's top student. "So, is it more shocking that the academy approves of all this or that Emily is the one doing the work? Naturally, the academy's tuition isn't cheap, but Emily is from a noble family, born and raised rich." It couldn't come together in Perry's mind. There are, of course, cases where nobles become maid of honor, but it's all just for political gain, thought the lad. Now Perry was even more curious about the kind of family Emily had grown up in. But he was not allowed to be so rude, so the lad tried to refrain from asking such a question. The next day, as the boy sat in class, Perry kept thinking about Emily. It was the first time the boy had ever been given such a chilling look by someone. "There have been many instances of people burdening me, but for me, never," Perry thought. But then a classmate pulled him away from his musings. "Perry, you're going to the party next week, aren't you? My dad is really hoping so," the classmate decided to ask. "If Marcus Hans is expecting me, how can I say no? I am honored," friendly replied Perry. And after that, the boys said goodbye. How pathetic. An idiot who is nothing. Without his parents, he is nothing. Perry was actually thinking about this man. In the moment, the guy saw how intensely focused Emily, who was sitting in front of him, was. Is she always so focused? If someone else saw her, the rumors would have definitely spread throughout the academy by now. I'm a diligent student, so I won't do something like that. But there's no guarantee that someone else won't. It crept into Perry's mind then. Besides, if word reaches the nobles that they lost, will things be just as peaceful? The protagonist of this story also pondered. Stop. Why do I even care about this? Why am I thinking about this? Nevertheless, I'm worried. For the first time in my life, someone beat me. I never thought it would happen. Maybe that's why my chest hurts so much. Perry admitted to himself. This is the first time I've had an opponent, and I feel weird about it. I can't forget the look on her face, the unfazed look without a shadow of kindness or hostility. Maybe it's all just a mask? The boy continued to ponder. It was then that he decided that from now on, Perry would watch Emily. Perry never denied his hostile talent, after all. It was much better to be naturally gifted. Perry had a good memory, gorgeous athleticism, and the ability to read quickly since childhood. Despite everything, Perry always studied hard and gave his best effort, because even talent has its limits. Perry is still as gifted and diligent to this day. To talk to the girl, the guy first decided to approach. But once he got closer, he couldn't even find the words to start a dialogue. Nice to meet you, but we've already met before, haven't we? What then? Express surprise? Honestly didn't understand the guy. Therefore, he only managed to point out that the girl was working again and smiled pleasantly. In fact, Perry wasn't tactless, more like just resourceful. But one thing had become clear to him. Emily wasn't interested in him at all. It was quite simple. He was just an eyesore to her. Wealth, beauty, fame, and respect. A soft character and a studious demeanor. Perry's a bright boy, the star of the academy. But to Emily, he was just an ordinary man. Don't look at a tree you can't climb. Based on this saying, Emily was not interested, not in sweets, not in pretty dresses and jewelry, not in a comfortable life. Now Perry was added to that list. Except he wasn't a tree, but rather a gem, a diamond of the highest caliber. Emily herself also noticed that they've been running into the guy quite a bit lately. I don't think he does it on purpose. We run into each other everywhere, no matter where or when I am. The girl thought and exhaled sadly. You are indeed a very busy person, but even so, being the first in the entire academy, that's incredible. Emily thought back to Perry's words. But he's not spreading any rumors. That's what worries me. I've paid my tuition and living expenses. All that's left is to send some money home. It would also be a good idea to call a doctor. The academy's top student thought about her problems. The honor and glory of Emily's family held only during the time of the first Viscount, who was a great wizard. Sensitive as hell, not a fan of society. He did leave behind some descendants. Unfortunately, in the generations that followed, there were no men of the same extraordinary talent. By the time she was born from Emily's father, all the wealth and fame had been squandered. But everything was in order. Instead of you having immense talent, he wanted you to grow up to be decent people, people who honorably fulfill their duties. Nanny explained to little Emily. That's right. Even managing small territories is an important task. Look how much everyone trusts your father. Isn't that why he's so busy? The nanny tried to convey to Emily as a child. However, all good things ever come to an end. There was an accident with the Viscount's carriage as it traveled through the Duke of Nota's grounds, the Vicomtesse's serious illness. Emily lost her father when she was barely 7 years old. She was forced to care for her gravely ill mother. These hardships forced her to grow up before her peers. I hope Mother is doing well. We should check on her soon. Sincerely thought the girl. The next day, Emily met up with her roommate. Are you my roommate? My name is Nona. I'm from another kingdom. The girl introduced herself. Nona also told her that there was an unforeseen accident on the way. That's why she was a little late. In fact, Emily wasn't too happy about her new neighbor. I was excited to live alone, in silence, and yet having 2 rooms. But now my quiet days have turned to dust. Disappointedly, thought the girl. I'm all right myself. Are you always so careful with your words? I didn't even realize what I said, replied Emily's new neighbor when the school's best student asked how the girl was feeling. Oh, you're embroidering? You want to give that to someone? Wow, you're a master at it. Are you going to sell it? That's not a bad idea. For every commodity, there's a merchant. Nona admired pleasantly. By the way, don't you think this academy is just huge? I even feel like it's bigger than my kingdom, the new roommate admitted. In fact, Emily was surprised too. The academy is much bigger than the girl expected. The dorm rooms are bigger than their house. Once Nona found out that embroidery takes a lot of time, she was even more surprised. That's sad. Could you give me a little tour of the academy? The new housemate then decided to offer. You didn't get a tour? I'm busy right now, so you'll have to wait. In a rude tone, Emily replied, You're too cold to your poor neighbor. You need to help people. Nona also added, and although Emily was in agreement, the girl was really busy right now. While I have to combine my studies and work, I can't waste my time. Friends are important, of course, but you can't get enough of them. Emily thought at that moment. Still, Nona was able to entice her nether to leave the room when she offered Emily something tasty to eat. Now the girl was giving the new dorm resident a tour. The library is divided into 2 buildings. To find information on magic, elements, and alchemy, you can use the building on the left. For everything else, the one on the right. Either way, you can find out about everything on the bulletin board. For dormitory or paperwork problems, you should go to the administration building. Narrated Emily. Well, Nona's attention at that moment was focused on something else. Emily, who is that? He looks like a prince. Could it be the crown prince who entered the academy? Assumed the girl when she saw Perry. Emily then explained that it was a guy from another class. He's not a prince. It's Perry, explained Emily lucidly. Although he really is a member of the imperial family since he's the son of that duke. Ah, right. I need to go to the administration building to get something. Abruptly, Nona remembered at that moment. Immediately after that, the girl ran off to another core. As soon as the new acquaintance left, Emily immediately thought that from now on, the days in the dormitory would become more tedious for her. Unnoticed, someone crept up behind Emily. It turned out to be Perry. Emily, what are you doing here? The smiling guy asked, and was surprised when the girl explained that she was showing the academy. It looked like a tour guide job, which is what the guy said. I got food for this. Can that be called a job? Or is it all a favor? Emily wondered, but still explained to Perry that a new roommate had just arrived. A roommate at a time like this? Well, now you won't be so bored out of your mind, said the guy, and the girl smiled sweetly. Ah, my roommate will be back soon. Seeing you, she'll want to hold you back, explained the girl to hint to the guy that she didn't want to linger with him for long. Oh yeah, I'll go first. Have a good trip. The guy said goodbye and left in his own direction. Once he was on his way home, he couldn't stop thinking about why Emily had smiled so unexpectedly. We see each other a lot. Is that why I felt more comfortable with him? Without noticing it myself, I smiled. Also surprised from herself was Emily, a student at the school. Emily, why didn't you wake me up this morning and just leave? The next morning, the roommate was angry. Although in fact, Emily tried to wake up Nona once, but she didn't get up. The dialogue between the 2 girls was noticed by other classmates. The girls were chatting about whether Emily's new roommate was the newly transferred princess of the neighboring Kingdom of Dor. The Kingdom of Dor is like a warrior country that tends to be self-sufficient, even though it is a bit poor. She is secretive due to her extremely private nature. There has been talk that the bowels of the kingdom's land are a treasure trove of minerals, but so far, it's only an assumption. Sending a member of the Dor royal family to study abroad is also happening for the first time. It's a good chance to learn about the Dai Kingdom, although it won't become a great power because Nona isn't an heiress. Does she know about her roommate being a member of the royal family? And she can't help but know that I'm also of the imperial family? Her eyes always read like she's not interested in worldly matters. In any case, her smiling face was incredibly beautiful, pondered the boy. Well, as soon as the realization came to Perry that he had just complimented the smile of the school's best student, the guy immediately thought to put it out of his head. No, the fact that she's pretty is one thing, but what do I care how Emily looks, whether she's pretty or not? The people before me fall into three types: a person in need, a person who will be needed in the future, and none of those things, justified Perry to himself. Truth be told, Emily doesn't belong to any of those. More specifically, she's a person who comes close to being a hindrance in my path. Perry also came to a conclusion. Things have happened to me that I couldn't even imagine. Apparently, I'm failing to properly comprehend the situation. Stop worrying about it. It will be enough if I start thinking of her as a wind that flew past me and evaporated in the same instant, thought the lad. At night of the same day, Perry met Emily again. She uses magic so easily and without any tools. They said she was just from a mage family that hasn't had any outstanding masters since the first Viscount? Surprised the apprentice. Yes, last time I couldn't completely wipe upwards. As you can see, it's much safer to use magic to get up here, the girl explained to him. Although it's safer than climbing a statue by hanging from a rope, the use of magic is strictly forbidden in the academy. Slipped through the boy's mind at that moment, but a second later, the girl explained to him that the dean had authorized her to do it. Then the girl thought to say that she and the boy had been seeing too much of each other lately. Perry had told her that it was just a coincidence. Although that was half true, I know too. The fact that this is the first time I've ever been interested in someone. I'm fixated on it because she's the first person among the aristocrats to make me feel defeated. I'm constantly following Emily's lead. If you think about it that way, it's pathetic. At a time like this, studying would have helped with grades, analyzed the boy. At the same time, Perry knew that if his father saw this, nothing good would happen. You're not smiling. You usually do. Interrupted from the boy's thoughts by a magical girl named Emily. You smile like this every day, said the girl, and demonstrated on herself how Perry does it. She stated to him that she was grateful to the guy for not telling anyone about her work. I just didn't want to look cavalier by telling others. There's nothing to be thankful for. Just then, Perry answered her. Well, I don't have anything to give you anyway, pondered the girl. Will you try to run your gaze into the statue? The scenery when you fly in from the top down is very beautiful. Decided to offer an alternative option to the girl. I'm not afraid of punishment, replied the boy, which meant something that he was willing to fly. Will you tilt your head for a bit then? Asked Emily. You're catching your eye a lot, so it's better to cover up, explained the girl and covered him with a robe. It's best to cover everything, including your head, advised the academy's best student. If going up together using magic, you need to hold hands, also said the girl and gave her hand to the guy. Be patient, even if it's stuffy in your robe, sweetly asked him Emily. After a moment, the guys were already flying upwards. I'm flying for the first time since I was born. That feeling, how should I describe it? He couldn't explain in words what the protagonist of the story felt. The next day, Emily met up with Perry again. Near the girl was a horse that was needed for lessons today. Yes, they said a stable boy is needed. It's unofficial. I'm working as an assistant and studying, the girl explained. She was already starting to think about where she would use horse care in the future, as a knight, or a mercenary, or for that matter, in the army. What kind of thoughts she lives her life with that she's drawing such a future? The lad thought to himself, and was genuinely surprised. But that was no compliment to the lady. Trouble. My perfect and affectionate picture that I held for long hours in front of Amelia has instantly evaporated. Not even a week has passed since we met. When I'm with Emily, I don't know where the dialogue will go. I'm usually the one leading the dialogue, and it's dangerous in front of Emily. Anxiously, the boy thought. There is nothing good about the increased number of opponents in front of whom my true colors are showing. Also, decided the guy. At that second, the girl pointed to a beautiful white horse. Somehow she immediately realized it was Perry's horse. She looks at you differently. What right would I have to be here if I didn't notice? Said the girl and smiled again. After this encounter with the girl, Perry gossiped with his roommate and longtime part-time friend Todd. Emily, I know. She shattered the magnificent legend of your endless victories. You almost cried at how sorry you were, mocked Perry's friend. Don't lie, the boy answered him rudely in return. It was then that Todd told him that they were listening to lectures together, the subject of the science of chivalry being the art of wielding the sword of the battlefield. You'd be surprised at how she does it. Seriously, she holds the weapon effortlessly. It's not an easy thing to do. Plus, the stance is quite so good, narrated the roommate. That's Emily. She made Perry swallow dust behind her. It would be weird if I wasn't interested, continued the friends, teasing. Perry, be honest. Are you interested in Emily? Decided to ask Todd. It's because it's the first time I've ever lost to someone, justified Perry. You admit that so meekly? You? Well, I'm not the only one interested in her. The others seem to be too. I mean, she's beautiful, continued the boy about the academy's best student. She is. Don't you remember the commotion when she took the podium on the first day? Besides, she has a cold charm. If she were more affable, she'd be much more popular than she is now. A roommate expressed his point of view. Is she intentional? Did what? What kind of affability? It doesn't suit her. Anyway, she seems busy. Why would she bother with such things? Everyone has gone crazy, completely. What other coldness? Only the chatter is good. Perry disagreed with him. The result this week is that Emily was very studious. So much so that I wondered why she wasn't still famous. She was so eye-catching, yet she didn't stand out from the group. Noted the guy. Even though she said she got permission, she still openly used magic within the walls of the academy. Because of that, we flew together. Because of the hand, too. With embarrassment, Perry shared his impressions with his friend. Wow, that's... Surprised, his friend shouted out, but never got to finish right away so as not to embarrass the guy even more. There's an unexpected typhoon brewing in the calm flow of Perry's life. God, I absolutely have to see this. Todd continued to bully his friend. The next day after class, Perry was approached by his classmate Alice. Good for me for changing the lecture. I met Perry at the same time. The girl shared her impressions with the protagonist of this story. Oh, that's right, Perry. They say you need a partner in Professor Harper's lectures. I was told by a senior who listened to this lecture last year. So, will you be my partner? The smiling girl decided to offer. Alice was the only daughter of Yersh County, who owned a huge gold mine. Perry maintained a friendly relationship with her, but he didn't know if the girl considered him only a friend. If possible, I'd better keep my distance with her. I've been able to do that so far, the boy reminded himself. Still, he had affably agreed to be her partner in the lectures, which the girl in turn was overjoyed about. As soon as the boy entered the classroom, he met Emily's gaze. The very night when they took off together flashed before Perry's eyes, so the student became very embarrassed. Why did I remember that night? It must have been because I was suddenly up in the air. There could probably be another reason, but if possible, I'd like to not know that reason for as long as possible. Perry admitted to himself at that moment. Now the lecture began. Everyone seems to be in their seats. Then I will now give you the homework I warned you about last class. The teacher decided to tell. The homework for this semester was an intellectual game that required a group of 2 people. The method was simple. The 2 people who became a group swap with each other, taking turns asking questions. If everyone gets it wrong once, the game is over. The main score will depend on the number of correct answers. Narrated the teacher, and right after that, for some reason, Perry got a bad feeling. In case the assignments are too easy, points on the contrary may be deducted, so be careful. The exam question area will be randomly determined by the study material on the appointed day. The winner will be awarded extra marks. Narrated the educator. In short, it is not only a group assignment, but also a personal assignment. The more questions students ask each other, the more the main score will go up. So no difficult questions can be asked in the beginning. The game will continue as long as the guys are answering questions, so there is a lot of material for both people to learn in this assignment. It's hard to expect much from Alice. If I'm going to get a good score, I need to prepare a countermeasure. Immediately, Perry thought to himself, "Okay, then I will now assign partners to complete assignments together during the semester. Mr. Perry and Lady Emily, and perfect." Unexpectedly, the man called out. But as soon as Perry looked at Emily's reaction, he thought that the girl didn't care at all about their names being called together. "What's that? Can't we talk to him about this?" Immediately after the lesson, Alice was outraged. After all, the girl had talked about wanting to be paired with Perry beforehand. "Alice, I'm sorry we won't be able to pair up." The only thing Perry was able to answer her. However, he did say several times that it's impossible to change partners. Even if you talk to him personally, the answer remains the same. You can't. In exchange, if you need help, contact me whenever. Perry continued to explain. But then the guy's dialogue with his classmate was interrupted by Emily, who approached the guys. "I'm sorry to intrude, Perry. Can you give me a few seconds?" the girl asked. Of course, Alice immediately started to resent it since she wanted to talk to Perry herself. "I don't have any time at all. If it's urgent, I'll tell you later. I'm sorry." Once again, Emily apologized, and then the guy decided to talk to her right away. The guys then decided to go to the Academy's garden since it was more comfortable to talk there. The girl apologized again for calling the guy out. Recently, she didn't even look at me. Though, of course, she shouldn't be doing that. Rang through the main character's thoughts at that moment. Wait a second, this situation. I was wondering why that hesitant face is painfully familiar to me. The protagonist of this story thought for a second. This was exactly what Perry had been through many times since his other academy days. A declaration of love. What the? So this was it? Of course, such a thing is possible. You can tell by most people their sincere feelings, but there are some who hide them well. The guy continued to ponder. People of that type sometimes act disinterested so that they end up achieving their goal. Pretend they don't like you. Pretend they don't want to socialize with you. Classic trickery to arouse an opponent's interest, pondered Perry. I failed to recognize a similar basis of fundamentals. Does she have a contentedly high level of acting? Fooled me with an uninterested person and I almost got caught. You can refuse with the same comment I've used so far. The proud lad confidently decided. What face should I make? What should I say? At that, wondered the protagonist of the story. To break the awkward silence, Emily decided to be the first to speak up about their academy project. It would be good to pick a day and agree on everything once. The professor is going to look at teamwork as well. Group assignment. It would be good to discuss it once. I'd appreciate it if you could facilitate it. The girl spoke up, and that's when the guy realized how badly he'd been misguided. We're partners. Right. Realized Perry, who had completely twisted the situation in the other direction. I can't lose my scholarship. Pick a time that's convenient for you. Today, tomorrow, the day after, and 2 days from now will be difficult. Joke. You had a very strange look on your face, the girl said after a second and laughed quietly. She always coldly said only what she needed to, but now she's joking. Has she tried joking with anyone? Thought the guy at that moment. The atmosphere continued to be awkward and strange. The fact that I have to get a scholarship is true. We need to set a meeting time. The girl explained then. In response, Perry suggested that he would come to the library later. I'd appreciate it if you'd do that. In exchange, don't make any noise in there when you get there, asked Emily, and said goodbye to the boy before leaving. As the girl walked away, Perry noticed that the way she was waving also looked beautiful. Even then, the guy wondered if he had really lost his mind. A few hours later, the guy was in the library. He was taking notes on the behavior of the best student in the academy. Emily smiled. Reason unknown. When not with people, reads a book. But what kind of book it is, there's no way to know. Supposedly a textbook. She smiled again. I notice her look hasn't changed, so it was definitely a false smile. A cheerful laugh. Made a note of the protagonist of the story. In the moment, the guy noticed that Emily smiled a lot. He thought she always had an indifferent expression on her face, like an emotionless stone. She knows how to smile so nicely, but the first time we met, she only threw me a cold look. Is she selective to people? Thought the boy as he waited for Emily's work to finish. For some reason, there was no way he could concentrate. The problem is the location. The sun is too bright, so I can't concentrate at all. Perry assumed and changed his seat. He sat down in the extreme corner of the library, but even there the terrain didn't suit him. And there's no sun, and a suitable coolness, and there's no one in the way. It seemed at first, but still curiosity overpowered him. Perry even peeked out from under a cabinet in the corner of the library to look at Emily. To calm down and come to his senses, the boy decided to find a book about rivalry. All she did was take away my gold, which in a way can be considered a mistake. I never had any competition, so I relaxed. Tried to console himself, Perry. Well then, from behind him came Emily herself, who approached him from behind, wondering what he was doing there. You can talk. Everyone's gone. I came in as soon as I looked around. By the way, apparently you were reading another book. Are you done with the exercises yet? The girl inquired. As soon as Emily was free, they sat down together to start preparing for class. What would be the best way to prepare for the quiz? I don't know how many parts there will be in it, but we need to decide if we assign questions in advance or rely on improvisation. I don't really care. I can learn the whole textbook. Narrated a smart Emily. In Emily's case, she really can learn everything. She said she absolutely has to get a scholarship. I don't need a scholarship, but what I do need is a first-place position. That's more valuable to me. Analyzed the protagonist of this story. That's when the kid said he didn't care either. Wait, if we rely on improvisation, there's no reason for us to keep meeting. There's no need to cooperate with each other if there's rivalry between us. That's the end of it. In the same second, Perry thought about it. However, the guy also remembered the expression about keeping your friend close and your enemy even closer. I mostly don't care, but working together beforehand is good too. In reality, things might not be so easy, so practicing will help take away our excitement. We also need to know the nature of the questions we'll be asking each other, so we'll write down somewhere around 21st. Decided, Perry suggested. Decided. Okay, so let's pick out the basic questions everyone should ask. We need to avoid repetition. Supported Emily's plan of action. While the girl was writing the questions, Perry noticed that her quill looked incredibly old. Emily had clearly been using it for a long time. Even with you looking at it like that, I only have one quill. Can I at least borrow some ink? Questioned the girl who thought the guy was staring at her because he didn't have a quill. Why do I keep looking at Emily? Is it because I'm supposed to be scrutinizing my enemy? If that's not the case, then... At that moment, a boy truly pondered. Manhwa Academy was facing a period of students enrolling in extra circles. When such a time comes at the beginning of the semester, every circle throws all their efforts into attracting freshmen. This is all due to the fact that assigned space and getting money for necessary spending depends on the number of participants in that circle. Though, of course, the more important reason is gaining new connections and reputation. Perry, would you like to join an international affairs circle? Don't resist and join our circle, of which Senior Andre himself is a member. Deep debates about the art of the sword are possible. Of course, you can get experience in actual combat. Persuaded the other students of the Academy's significant student. I've never seen you participate in a fencing competition even once. What real combat? Perry, you haven't picked a class yet, have you? The upperclassman continued to ask. I can either join a club or not join at all, but considering that clubs are created for the sake of making new acquaintances and connections, once I join a few, will they all end? What level of club I should choose is not a small problem. thought at that moment the protagonist of this story. At that second, the guy also noticed Emily, who was sitting off to the side. It's so noisy, and she doesn't look around once. No one says a word to her. Noted Perry. At least it's not something to worry about. Maybe I should at least say a few words to her. Already the guy was thinking. But then he noticed an uncomprehending man approaching Emily. The classmate told him that it was Winter, who, as expected, came in person. Winter is the president of the Magical Materials Making Circle. It's a circle where erudite people flock together. Because of this, there is a feeling that lectures are always mandatory there. That's why it's not popular. Magical Materials Crafting Circle. I heard of it once. Besides, it wasn't something good. Perry thought for a second. Really? They've been accepting anyone lately, and even those immediately leave. Of course they do. How many people are there who want to study in the mug room? The professor in charge also often comes into the mug room and keeps everyone under his supervision. The classmates continued to discuss amongst themselves. That's the situation that's causing no one to go there. If they can't keep a certain number of participants, they'll have to close down. Apparently he's thinking of accepting newcomers as members of the circle. Perry thought logically. It didn't work out for the upperclassmen either. As luck would have it, Emily was the one he chose. Busy with work everywhere, Emily can't have time for some kind of club. No matter how persuasive he is, it won't work out. Sure, thought Perry. But, to the lad's surprise, within a second the girl was already shaking hands with Winter. In a few minutes, the news that Perry wanted to join the club had spread to all the upperclassmen who were calling him to join their club. In the Manhwa Academy building, where the club rooms were located, the word was out that the student had already declined the invitations of several clubs. A fierce race has begun, in which every club is eager to get their hands on this incredible rookie. As soon as Andre finishes his academy training, Perry will be the only string that gives him the opportunity to get a link to his family home. A chance in a million when you can create a connection with this guy's house, a representative and famous family that is part of the imperial family. However, the club Perry had his eyes set on was far away from the general chaos. Well, of course, it was a club for making magical materials. She didn't seem like someone willing to waste time on club activities. That was unexpected. Rumored Perry in his head. I'm not sure, but perhaps she joined there due to some circumstance. How did he manage to lure Emily in? The protagonist of the story continued to ponder curiously. Finally, after a few minutes, the famous fans of the mage's activities, Alice and her brother Winter, arrived. The Miller brother and sister are good judges of character, possessing a tough mouth. One can easily guess that they are both famous for their unusual character. If they didn't come from a widely known academician in scientific magic circles, no one would dare to approach them. Are they going to make me an offer to join the club too? Magic materials clubs need people more than anything else. I'm as good a fit for them as anyone, decided the cocky Perry. But there was too much confidence in the boy, as these people only silently walked past him. As soon as Winter and Alice entered the magic-making club, they were met there by Rita Cart, a third-year student. Winter couldn't find any more people? The girl immediately asked. But the boy told her that there was simply no one who was interested. Yeah, and basically there's no one interested in this club, added Winter's childhood friend Mark, who was in his second year of college. At the time, Emily said she had heard that if the club didn't have 6 people in it, it would be shut down. That is why I am so grateful to you, Lady Emily. Thanks to you, we only have to find one person, and we can avoid being closed, said Winter. And you don't want to thank me? I'm the one who became the 4th member of your club. Mark intervened in the conversation. You claimed that I would be able to avoid paying dues for joining and being here. What's more, you later mentioned that you would tell me how to make saleable materials. Emily decided to remind. Mark, on the other hand, told her that he didn't expect there would ever be anyone who would fall for Winter's bait. Well, this is a chance to learn something that will help me in the future without spending too much money. Emily thought at that moment. It was then that the boys noticed that it was very noisy outside. Winter told them that it was all because of Perry. Wow, the same Perry? Maybe we should go take a look at least. Maybe Perry's looking for a club to join too? Winter, have you asked him what he thinks of ours? Pleased, she decided to clarify Rita. What do you think I can catch using a snare without bait? Without even knowing what club he's looking for, he's clearly not interested in ours. I'm not in the habit of wasting my time on knowingly unsuccessful cases. Alice's brother thought. Winter, there's no excitement in you at all. Do you think the club would be threatened with closure if a man like that joined? It would make a real sensation during the festival, and we'd get more than enough money to run the club. Rita explained her point of view. One of the rules of every Manhwa Academy club is that the spending of the participants' personal funds on club activities must not exceed a certain limit. This is to keep a balance among the clubs and to increase the enthusiasm of their members' activities. As a result, the clubs had to achieve their achievements through the activities of their members and increasing their numbers. Therefore, it is logical to assume that if there were clubs that had a lot of members and their budgets were constantly replenished with fees for joining and staying there, then there were those clubs that were barely making ends meet. One of them was the club for making magical materials. Come to think of it, Emily beat out Perry for first place. By the way, haven't you ever talked to Perry in person? That's when Rita decided to ask the question. Emily admitted that the guy congratulated her, and she thanked him. Come to think of it, in Professor Harper's history lectures, we're paired with him. The girl also added, What luck! Then can you ask him about it? Ask him how he likes our club. It's not hard, will you try? Rita asked, and Emily had no problem agreeing. On the way to the dormitory, the Academy's top student thought about how it would be nice if the professor came more often. There was still a lot more she needed to learn. After walking a couple of meters, the girl happened to run into Perry. That's when she remembered Rita's request. Is it okay if I ask him now? It's better to ask quickly and get rejected while no one else is around, thought the girl, and really decided to ask him about the club. As soon as she noticed the look in the guy's eyes, she knew right away that he would say no. That's what I knew. It's for me that a club like this is the best option, but Perry is willing to accept a bunch of clubs. He doesn't have to join this particular one. Realized the girl. But, to her immense surprise, the boy suddenly agreed. I'd like to join the club you're talking about, Perry admitted. Why? You could join any other club, much better than this one. Decided to ask the girl. Then the guy decided that a better idea would be to tell her that it was just because he would be able to see the professor often. Crazy, I couldn't say that. Are there people who want to see the professor often? No, I said I wanted to join. Why would she ask for a reason? It's a club that doesn't even have people in it. Since I'm joining, why not just say thank you and that's it? The boy began to ponder. Oh, so you decided to join for that reason too? I have to try even harder. Being around you, it's going to be hard to defend my place. Well, I'll see you tomorrow. Unexpectedly, the girl said, and said goodbye to the guy. The next day, Mark picked up a book that suited him in the library, but the guy himself was extremely unhappy about it. And what am I even doing here? In the library, and even at the very beginning of the semester? He thought at that moment. It was a request from someone who hates being obligated. I had to fulfill it to the best of my ability, of course. As soon as I joined, the responsibilities were immediately thrust upon me, thought the lad, presenting Winter's image. Before you meet the professor in charge of our club, it would be best to learn something. Winter had advised earlier. Since Mark's eyes were tired, he decided to take off his glasses for a second to wipe the lenses, and this was immediately noticed by the other girls. They immediately started talking about the guy's beauty. What a handsome guy! Did our academy really have people like that? The ladies whispered. Not only do I not care about these clubs, but I also have to study. At this moment, Mark was thinking, sure, it was my choice, but how annoying things are annoying. The guy continued to freak out. At that moment, he had an unexpected encounter with Emily. Emily is the odd fish that got hooked by the wily Winter. She beat out Perry for first place, and for a while became the most raging topic of discussion in the academy. Thought the boy at that moment. Then the guy told her aloud that he was surprised to see her like that. The girl, on the other hand, explained that this was just the first time she'd been assigned to work in this section. This girl is a perfect match for Winter. If she's not interested in the subject of the conversation, you can hardly expect a reaction from her, Mark remarked. Not only am I in the same club as the two Millers, but there's one other person there who's a lot like that family, a company in which the concept of fun is clearly superfluous. Mark continued to resent it in his head. Ah, how did it go with Perry? Rita had a contentedly anticipatory look on her face, questioned the boy. The girl immediately told him that Perry had said he'd like to join their club. Really? I didn't think he'd say yes. Unexpected. Mark marveled. By the way, Mark learned at the same moment that the lectures where he and Perry are paired up are taught by Professor Harper, just as Mark had thought. Only Professor Harper gives assignments like that. I got a family tree book last year. Do you need it by any chance? The boy also decided to ask. As soon as the Magic Club member mentioned this book, the girl's eyes immediately lit up. Need it. Really need it. With a smile, the girl said. Mark saw that this book would indeed be of interest to Emily, so he arranged with the student to borrow the book. And just recently she was talking rather dryly, answering my questions clearly, as if reading out a report. Funny girl, Mark remarked. That's when the guys decided that they would go to the clubroom together later. It was on their way anyway. When Amelia and Mark approached the clubroom for magic materials, Perry was already there at that time. Gosh, Mr. Perry, I didn't expect you to actually agree to join us. Rita expressed her admiration. Whereupon the guy asked to be called just Perry. I can address Mr. Winter, don't you think it's just blindingly bright in this room today? Questioned the girl to the main member of the club. I don't know about the room, but looking at your joy, one could go blind. I didn't even think that someone like you would agree to join us. This decision must have been hard for you. The older Miller decided to express his opinion after he answered Rita. But the new member, on the contrary, denied it. Not at all. I've been interested in the scope of your club for a long time, Perry admitted. Since that's the case, we were very lucky. We were on the verge of closing. Winter answered him, though Rita tried her best to deny it. We won't be able to accept everyone. We'll only accept those who fit the atmosphere of our collective. Just then, Winter began to explain to the girl. Since I've joined the club, from now on it will be best to maintain good relations with both the Miller siblings, Rita, and the Karth Shrine. By the way, when is Emily coming already? As I recall, her shift at the library should have been over by now. Abruptly, the protagonist of the story remembered. Just at that moment, Emily and Mark entered the room. The guys were discussing the best time to give the family tree book away. Mark, are you here yet? Can you believe Perry agreed to join us? Oh, you came along with Emily. On emotion, Rita immediately boasted. At this time, Perry, who was watching the guys from the side, was extremely displeased. Why did they come together? By the way, this Mark, what did such an important person whom I never thought of meeting forget in this small club? Perry began to get angry. Mark Reeve is the second son of Marquis Reeve, who holds the position of Lord Chancellor of the Empire. In a normal situation, Perry and Mark would no doubt be able to get along without much trouble and perhaps even become good friends. But the problem is that their families have a rather strained relationship. Since my father, the Commander-in-Chief, is the Duke of the Imperial Order, he, like Marquis Reeve, was one of those who had the right to make decisions of national importance. And almost always the opinions of these two contradicted each other. Recalls the protagonist of this story. In addition, Perry's father, being a member of the imperial family and having the right of succession to the throne, as well as having more power than the Marquis of Reeve, could not get a post higher than his rival. As a result, the two families disliked each other intensely. They said your name was Perry. Glad to meet you. Even though we met later than I thought. Mark was the first to say hello. "Never had the right opportunity, Mark," Perry replied and tried to smile in a friendly manner. "Let's keep our father's business out of the academy. That sort of thing doesn't interest me at all," decided to suggest Mark. The protagonist didn't particularly want to get involved in his family's conflicts either, so let's agree to make such concessions. That said, there was a nuance that still didn't suit Perry. Why did she come back specifically with Mark, always making me worry about myself? Thought a disgruntled Perry. The girl herself was also surprised that Perry was in the magic club room. By the way, how did they meet? It hasn't even been 24 hours since she joined the club. There shouldn't be any other points of contact between them. Are such bespectacled men really her type? I can't be firmly sure because of those ugly glasses, but judging by looks alone, he can't be called a man I should be wary of. Perry wondered, especially since Perry knew that there were rumors that the Marquis of Reeve's eldest son was quite handsome, but Perry himself had heard nothing of the sort about his second son. There's no doubt that I'm better. But what next? Perry stumped himself. In a moment, the lad as a whole realized how strange it was that he was now thinking something like that. Plus, the cause of such thoughts is none other than Emily, the one who is completely indifferent to me. Crazy, no. You can't. Trying to push the intrusive thoughts out of his head, Perry tried. That same day, Perry decided to talk to his friend Todd. "What is it, Perry? What's happened? Why do you have such a serious face?" Todd was the first to ask. "No, something did happen after all. Go ahead and share it with your good friend, and I'll listen to you carefully." His friend encouraged him. Though Perry wondered for a moment if he should tell Todd about it, he still decided to share his worries. "Well, a man asked me something. He's been feeling weird and worried lately because he can't find a reason for it." Perry began to narrate. "What's the matter? Some kind of health problem?" a friend asked in response. "If it's like that, say yes. If it's not, say no, which means it looks like it is." Thode thought to himself after hearing the incomprehensible answer from Perry. It was then that the lad inquired about his friend's symptoms. "His thoughts are always revolving around one man, and when he sees him, he can't take his eyes off him," the protagonist went on to say. "Besides, it's worth it when their eyes meet, and his heart sinks," Perry also shared. Already at that moment, Todd understood everything perfectly. Finally, spring has come and Perry, and it's clear that it's about Emily, Todd thought to himself. Gosh, I think it's serious. I've heard of such a thing. The boy decided to declare, in order to drag out the intrigue and taunt his friend a little longer, so as not to point directly to Perry's crush on Emily. "Looking at that person, everything inside turns upside down, and it feels like something rises up from inside. It gets stuffy right away. Did he tell you that?" Decided to ask Todd, and, of course, received a favorable answer. "It's the competitive spirit. It's the resentment that rises from within," Todd then stated. "Who knows if your friend happened to lose to that man, well, or if something like that happened to him. Or it could be some serious illness. Should we send him a doctor? You just say the word. Where else will you find friends willing to listen to you?" A friend of the protagonist's was already jokingly making fun of him. Perry himself still thought about the words he had said. "Rival spirit, heart disease. I'm not such a petty person as to hold a grudge for missing first place." Considered the lad. Heart disease is all the more impossible. Feeling pain in a healthy body that has never once felt an ailment? Absurd, reasoned Perry. But it would be better if my condition were connected with any of these things. If it is a competitive spirit, it will be easy enough for me to triumph. If it is heart disease, it can easily be cured. But if it's neither... Seriously, Perry pondered. If what I feel when I look at Emily is not the spirit of rivalry, and I have never complained of heart disease, then what is it? Perry did not understand, but at the same time was in every way reluctant to perceive other options directly connected with his feelings for the girl. The next day, after the class was over, Perry stayed a little longer in the classroom with Emily. The boy told the girl that he was coming to the library to do his homework. At that very second, Perry ran into Alice. "Perry, we need to pick a club by the end of this week. Have you decided yet?" asked the lady. The guy then confessed to her that he had considered several options and had already joined one of them, after which the girl inquired where he was going. Alice had originally planned to join the same club that Perry would be in, but once she found out that he was now a member of the Magic Making Club, she began to question her decision. "I need to think about it for a while. But if you decide to join any more clubs, make sure you tell me, okay?" Alice asked him. "Got it, I promise," replied Perry, and smiled sweetly. The guy himself knew that the girl wouldn't want to go to this club. That being said, Alice was falling in love with Perry's beautiful smile more and more every day. "It would be nice if gentle and sweet Perry and I spent the rest of our lives together. I'll do anything to make that happen. By all means. Perry won't refuse my request," pondered Alice. After a while, Perry came to the library as promised. Just then, the boy walked in very fortunately, as there was no one there at that moment. "It's not closing time, so it was easy to guess when it was best to come in," said the guy. It was then that he noticed a leaf from a tree on the table. "Why something like that? I'd clean it up," thought the student, and was already reaching for the leaf. But then the girl snatched it away as it turned out to be her bookmark. How tangible was the difference between Perry and Emily, for Perry's book was on the table, and the bookmark in it was pure gold, with her initials personally engraved with the master's seal. "Thank you for joining the club. Oh, and Rita really liked you," decided Emily suddenly thanked him. "This club is a good chance for me to learn something new. I don't want it to be shut down like this. Thanks to you, everything worked out well," the girl admitted. "She doesn't even look at me. Usually people are nervous around me, embarrassed to look not in my face again. However, that time, the one who couldn't take her eyes off was me," the protagonist of this story realized. It wasn't that Perry couldn't take his eyes off of her, but Emily was definitely smiling, and the boy remembered it well. Still, he needed to focus on his studies. So the boy spent a few hours in the library. "All my muscles are stiff from sitting like this. And Emily, still in the same pose as before," Perry marveled. Apparently, she was able to read a little. Didn't take notes on anything. Does she really teach everything just like it says? Nor did the student understand. Be that as it may, the sight of Emily reading a book was quite enjoyable. It was obvious that the girl was enjoying it, and it's rather strange. She's enjoying a book that's more like a deadly weapon with almost 1,000 pages. That's interesting. Imagine, I can learn things I've never experienced myself, and only through reading. Besides, while reading, you don't need any praise or recognition from others. I like that I can gain something new by spending time quietly like this," the girl admitted quietly. At that moment, Perry thought deeply. She looked so indifferent all the time, even when she was doing that nasty job. But in truth, Emily was looking at others wordlessly, waiting for her actions to be evaluated again. Since that was the case, then how much of a burden was all that work to Emily? How long had she suffered from it? "And I'm not as outstanding as you. How were you able to memorize all that stuff after only reading it once?" the girl admitted to him honestly. She told him that she noticed how the guy's eyes never once returned to where they had already been. "Even though I don't care, it's amazing. It's a relief that I was able to get into the academy," the girl admitted. In fact, Perry, like many people around him, considered studying to be something boring. For him, studying and reading was something he was obliged to do, having no other choice. Perry never thought that for someone else, these things could be something that could be compared to the road to freedom, to liberation. Until recently, the protagonist of this story had thought that Emily not only didn't look like an aristocrat, but was also strange. Now the guy was ashamed of his thoughts. At the beginning of the weekend, students began to leave the academy in a hurry, returning to their homes. Emily also decided to visit her family. Therefore, after paying 10 coins, after a few hours the girl reached her home by carriage. At home, she was met by her mother. "Emily! How can I sit still when you are home again? The woman rejoiced and ran right up to her child to hug the girl, though it was undesirable for her mother to overstretch herself. You're hungry, aren't you? There's some pie Miss Dana brought. Hold on a second, Mom asked and excused herself. As soon as the girl was alone, she noticed the lace that her mom was making herself. And because of her illness, the woman was making this fabric with great difficulty. Oh, yeah, can you take these laces to the store a little later? I couldn't make much, but even this will do for the sale, Mom asked at the same time. At that moment, Emily pointed out to her mom once again that she shouldn't continue to put too much strain on her arms. What are you talking about? I don't do anything anyway, and this is just for fun anyway, the woman replied with a smile. But Emily was very angry about it after all. Health should come first. Not doing anything? If it wasn't for you, I wouldn't even be able to get into the academy, replied the daughter. That's entirely your merit. I had nothing to do with it, said the mother in response. But the girl didn't hold back what she was thinking at that moment. Mom, you were the one who suggested I go there, and you were the one who applied, suggesting that I just try my luck in the entrance exams. Come to think of it, Mom, it's all because of you, reminded Emily and smiled. A short time later, Emily and her mom headed to the dress store to hand over the lace. The shopkeeper was overjoyed that Emily's mom had brought the material again. Ah, apparently the Viscountess has decided to do some needlework again, the woman guessed, to which Emily was surprised, since the shopkeeper identified Emily's mother's particular wares every time. The woman already had her own style of lace, which couldn't help but please both the shopkeeper and the customers of the material. If I couldn't make such a simple thing, then how could I make a living doing this kind of work? Sweetly replied the seamstress. That said, the money paid for the fabric was rather small, especially since Emily remembered that her mom was almost out of medicine, and yes, a house healer also cost a lot. Even though I don't do anything but study and work, it doesn't make me any more money. It feels like pouring water into a bottomless vat, Emily thought sadly. While the girl was sitting, thinking about her life, at this time Alice also found herself in the store. Alice was the first to notice her classmate. Emily, did she come to buy a dress? The girl was surprised. Although she is a noble woman who hardly appears in Soviet society, but how can she walk around in such clothes? It's disrespectful to all aristocrats. The blue dress has long since gone out of fashion, though it's worth noting her posture is commendable, Alice thought. But above all, Alice didn't like the fact that Emily was spending a lot of time with Perry. When Emily returned to the academy a couple days later, as soon as the girl walked into the magic-making circle room, she noticed a stranger there. She thought it was a newcomer and silently sat next to him, waiting for Mark to come in. Well, then this guy wiped off his glasses to put them back on. Handsome guy, and it turned out to be Mark. I expected more surprise from someone who didn't recognize someone he's in the same club with, said the guy. Sorry, sometimes I'm not very clueful, apologized the girl. And what? Won't even say anything about my face? Like, the glasses don't suit you, or you're better off without them, thought Mark, who was really expecting a more violent reaction from the lady. As it turns out, Mark wears the wrong glasses. Moments when someone furtively compared Mark to his older brother fundamentally changed the guy's attitude towards such people. And so the girl did start to say something about glasses, as the guy expected. But to his surprise, she didn't say anything about Mark's appearance. Those glasses. Don't think anything of it. But can I try them on? Inquired the girl. As soon as the girl put on the accessory, she started to look busy. That's when the guy also handed Amila the book he had promised her. Thank you. I'll try to return it to you not too late. Immediately, the girl replied, You don't have to. I don't need it. You can put it to yourself or throw it away when you've read it. Unexpectedly, the guy replied. Not thinking long, the girl decided to ask if she could sell the book in that case. Sell it? Well, do as you wish. It's none of my business anymore. Mark answered her. Like I said, she's a rather odd one, like the rest of her family. The boy thought at that moment. A few minutes later, Perry entered the room and immediately saw the two guys together. Why are they together again? The first time was accidental, but the second time already raises questions. Angered the guy. It was obvious that Perry began to be jealous of the girl to a colleague in their circle, but the guy himself didn't show it, so he personally pulled on a fake smile and greeted Mark and Emily. The lack of sincerity in the guy's emotions was sensed by Mark. Perry, what's the matter? I can hear him saying, "Why would you show up here if you don't have any business here?" Mark thought to himself at that moment. I stopped by because I wanted to check something with Winter. I guess I came at the wrong time. Had to tell the guy. Winter has a meeting with the professor today, so he's a little late. Immediately, Mark explained to him. Will you wait for him? We've already resolved all our issues. We can vacate the room. Decided to offer Mark, but Perry declined as he decided to come back later. It also caught the guy's attention more when Mark said, ours. Jealous Perry didn't like that at all. So that Emily wouldn't sit for long with a guy who was unpleasant for the protagonist, Perry decided to personally poach the girl. Oh yes, Emily, are you free right now? I want to discuss something about homework. Why don't we have lunch together then? Decided Perry suggested. Of course, the girl agreed, since she had no other plans for today. Well, we'll go then, said Perry cheerfully, making a showy goodbye to Mark. Mark was left sitting alone in the magic study room, completely out of spirits. His stare, with a dose of hatred that he directed at Perry, couldn't even be described in words. In addition, before finally leaving the study room, Perry made a snide smile to dedicate to Mark. Did he just smile? Somehow there was some irritation, not some misgiving. Felt at that moment an offended Mark. The boys now walked together to the dining hall. Perry lagged a little behind Emily, but the lad did it on purpose, to admire the girl surreptitiously. Perry gazed at her beautiful hair. Purple hair. It's a rare color, but it suits her. By the way, I think her eyes are the same shade, doesn't she? He pondered, looking at the academy's top student. Abruptly, Perry once again remembered the unpleasant moment he'd had, Emily's encounter with Mark, so he decided to discuss it aloud with the girl. It feels like you've known Mark before, the guy stated. Yeah? Asked Emily in surprise, who turned back sharply. She hadn't expected Perry to start talking about something like that. Ah, you are. They look like the evening sky framed in misty veils, noted the boy as soon as the girl turned around. A mysterious color, so reminiscent of a pond at dawn. Considered Perry's incredibly beautiful eyes of the girl. Of course, Perry is the one who started the conversation about the brand, only to see Emily's eyes again. The girl is really beautiful, just like the main character's old friend Todd said. He said that just to mess with me, but it's worth noting Emily is really beautiful. Already Perry realized for sure. Since Emily had turned around, the conversation about Mark needed to continue. Perry revealed that he gets that feeling since he sees the guys together quite often. No, I met him already after joining the club. He said he was going to give me a family tree book for my history class. That's why we met today. The girl explained. I don't know many people here, so I figured why not. It's not like I got it for nothing. Emily began to justify herself. Right. Where else would Emily get a family tree book? After all, not only does she have no acquaintances at the academy, she doesn't have a single person she could call a friend. But speaking of a family tree book, maybe instead of that Mark, it's better to have me, pondered the main character. Maybe I should ask Andre for a favor once. Suddenly, such an ingenious thought came to Perry's mind. At that, the guy immediately realized that his reasoning had gone too far. Stop! Why are you thinking about that? Why? Emily is the thief who stole my first place. I hate to admit it, but to me, she's the rival who won our confrontation. And what man in his right mind would help his rival? Sputtered Perry to himself. Are you coming? At that moment, it was Emily herself who distracted him from his new thoughts. The boy had finally come to his senses. However, to speak of Emily as a rival, it's worth considering that their relationship with Perry from the starting line is too different from each other. With the passage of time, the gap between the guys will narrow, and Perry will then consider leaving him far behind. Those who have to worry not only about their studies, but also about their standing outside the gates of the academy, will be able to make some useful acquaintances in the future. Emily, talk to me if you need anything. A family tree book, for example. I have a couple acquaintances who have already graduated from the academy. Then still the boy confessed to her. This contentedly surprised the school's top student. I'll be grateful, but is that really allowed? The girl decided to ask. Sure. Sweetly the guy answered her and smiled sincerely. It was only after a few seconds that Perry realized just how generous he was. In any case, even if now the guy would help her, he would still be the one who would have the last laugh. At least, that's what the protagonist of this story thought himself. Emily appreciated such help from an acquaintance, so she lightly touched him to express her gratitude and thanks. Let's go. We're going to be late after all, the girl said after a second, for it was already time to go to school. It took a few more minutes for the guy to move away after her touch. It was the last straw for Perry to decide to visit the doctor after all. A few hours later, the results of the examination were in Perry's hands. No obvious abnormalities were found. Everything looked like simple overwork. No symptoms were found to suggest heart disease. No signs of it either. What are the odds that the Duchy's family doctor is a quack? No, stop it. That makes you even more pathetic. Tried to calm himself down the protagonist of this story. The guy was really already guessing what might actually be happening to him, but he didn't want to take this option seriously at all. This is not a heart disease, and there's no spirit of competition here. The irrepressible heartbeat, the awe-inspiring eye-to-eye stare, the inner trembling from even a light touch. And also the fact that these inexplicable feelings are connected to only one person. Just thinking about what it could really be made the guy stop breathing. Stop! I can't gain anything by giving my heart to Emily. On the contrary, I stand to lose a lot. Perfectly understood Perry. Being one of the sons of the house of his kingdom, Perry gets quite a few advantages. Even saying that he was born in a cradle of gold wouldn't exaggerate much. But Perry was number 3. Number 3, ahead of whom were the elder brothers. Even if I can't inherit any of the territories under my father's control, I'll be the one whose life certainly can't be called trouble-free. Reasoned the protagonist, and there was a sort of upside to that. Wealth for the rest of his life was assured. Well, anyway, Perry couldn't be born first. He couldn't have been born second either. Unfortunately, that can't be changed. His father, victorious in the struggle with his brothers for power, wanted to ensure that the mistakes made by his generation would not be repeated again. Number 3 must fit his place. Perry now realized that he must live with these words sealed forever in his heart. There's no need to fight with other people for the throne, but to proudly throw the sword out of his hands. And in fact, the protagonist of this story was doing quite well. At least up to this point, everything was going as smoothly as it could. All he has to do is to be ready for what will happen in the near future. Therefore, Perry must have people around him who would later become his strength. For example, Alice from Yorgi County, who possessed a huge gold mine. Or Bach from Han Palace, who is widely known for his connections in trade. This must all be accomplished so that, even after stepping back from the glory of his lineage, Perry can still shine. But Emily has nothing to do with any of this. Although she was born into a Viscount family, her father had no position or standing, and her clan is not particularly famous for anything. Besides, Perry's father, who has a truly noble pride, would not approve of such a connection. So these feelings are a seed which it is better to get rid of before it germinates. Surely this is the truest unrequited love. Fortunately, Emily does not have any feelings for the guy, so it's up to him to deal with it himself. Hiding his feelings is not as hard as Perry thought. Besides, what else is a guy supposed to do?